a bow, but some people just use it as a single pluck string. Bone as a flute has been found from very old caves and excavations. So these kinds of instruments have been there for a long time. Not necessarily the way we see music today, but it's been used in different forms. And when it comes to music, so we need to define what's musical sound, and it's basically defined by pitch, timbre, tone, consonants, scale, octaves, whose pitch is what, and loudness. Now, here is something interesting. When you hear a car horn or a loud truck going by and so on and so forth, that doesn't sound musical, right? There is a difference, but it's also sound. Musical sound is also sound. So what defines noise versus sound? And I think that's the important thing that everything comes down to. Why is some sound very soothing to the ear? Why is something very appealing, and why is something so harsh? Now, music as an aesthetic form could be subjective. We may like some forms of music, some others may like some forms of music, and so on and so forth. But clearly, there is music and there is noise. And what defines music, what defines noise? And these are some of the parameters which go into understanding what's music. And resonance, pitch, tone, harmonics, and periodicity versus noise. Noise is always random collection of frequencies. Musical sound will always have some periodicity to it. The frequencies will repeat in some form. Sustain, sound projection, sound hall is a process I will talk about when we come to instruments. So we come to the main topic of the day, which is acoustics of Tanpura. Tanpura evolves from ektara as a single string instrument. Like I was telling you, you could have a coconut shell or a skull. Early days were skull. Even before coconut shell, skulls were used. So you have skull, a pipe, and a hollow pipe. Interesting. And a gut string, and it was used as an ektara. So it started from ektara, then in between there was, it evolved into something called a tamburi veena. And then from tamburi veena, it went to chitra veena. Chitra veena is a sliding instrument before Tanpura took its present form and shape. What happens in a Tanpura? What is a Tanpura, and why is it so important? Indian music is based on melody, raga. Raga is a melody. What happens is that melody is sung or performed to a fixed fundamental. We don't have a fixed scale like the Western music. We don't have like an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, we have a sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, but the sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa is defined by me. My sa could be different from Dr. Vishwas ji's, could be different from Girish ji's, could be different from everybody. It doesn't matter. Where I define my sa, which is the fundamental, is my fundamental. And then everything else is relative to that. Now, when I say everything is relative to that, then I need to always know what my fundamental is, so that I can sing or play relative to that. And that's what Tanpura provides. So Tanpura is a 4-string instrument. The middle 2 strings are tuned to the middle octave sa. The 3rd string is tuned to the lower octave sa, and the 1st string is tuned to either the 4th or the 5th, which is the madhyam or the pancham based on the rag. This is in its simplest form. When you play the Tanpura, there's a vibrating string, and I will show you a demo very soon on how things work on it. There is a bridge and there is a nut. So this is the bridge and this is the other end. When you pluck the string, it sets off a vibration, and that vibration moves back and forth, which is what gives the sound. That vibration is also what provides the harmonics and the overtones. The big difference between Western instruments and Indian instruments is this huge factor. Most of the Western instruments work, the string is always between two end points. They are point ends. Indian instruments, on the other hand, have one end which is a point end, and this is a flat end. It's not a single point end, but it's a continuum. Indian instruments are the only instruments in the world which have these kinds of bridges. For example, you take a guitar or a violin or a rabab or any of these, Western string instruments. They have a wedge-shaped bridge and a net and a nut. So which basically means there's a point here on which the string sits on, and there's a point here on which the string sits. The physics of that is very simple in some form. It's like point to point, the string vibrates and it moves, and you can create a standing wave equations and you can figure out the whole physics. Indian instruments, on the other hand, one end is a point and the other end is a flat bridge, which means there's a continuum of points. And I will tell you what happens in the next slide. Yeah, I'll show you everything. Not an issue. There you go. So this is how a Tanpura bridge looks like. This is a flat bridge with a slight curvature, and here is a thread which goes from below the string. What happens is, when you vibrate the string, because it's a continuum of surfaces, when you vibrate the string, at its highest amplitude, it will touch till here. But then, in every vibration, it will touch here, 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 here. It will have a continuum points. So which means I am moving the node of this string over this entire bridge length. This is a very unique property of all Indian instruments, whether it's Tanpura or Veena or Sitar or any of these flat bridge instruments that we have. It's not a single point V-shaped bridge. It's a flat bridge which moves over. This is what gives it that uniqueness, that sound, that the rich envelope. So it's not, even though we say fundamental, it's not one point note. It's an envelope of frequency. It's a whole range which comes out from that, and each one of those have their own harmonics. That's what gives the richness to the sound. When you put a thread, you add an additional complexity to the instrument. What happens is, so at this point it lifts because there's a thread below the string, and then it again touches the bridge. When you vibrate, this actually lifts up. So what happens is, you have moved the nodal point from here right up till here. And then it keeps moving up and down, up and down. And so it creates a series of frequencies and a series of harmonics. Now, you can also move this. You can make slight adjustments to the string to move it up and down, which means you are actually moving the nodal point up and down. And therefore, you are also changing this length where the strings hit the bridge. That makes a difference to what kind of harmonics are attenuated or what kind of harmonics are made loud. In olden days, till I think even maybe 50, 60 years back, an artist on a stage was his quality of artistic excellence, or whatever you may call it, was defined by how well has he tuned the Tanpura and what rag is he singing with reference to the Tanpura. And if you understand how this instrument works, then you can understand that you can tune a Tanpura to the rag that you want to sing, because it has a whole range of frequencies, and you can define which one do you want the Tanpura to sing out. Of course, that needs a very highly trained ear. The other way is you tune the Tanpura, and then you listen to it, and then you define what you want to sing based on what's coming out of that. And this was used as a, as a judgment of artistic brilliance in those days, because there would be great artists sitting in front and then listening to the Tanpura, and they'll be talking among themselves saying, okay, we expect him to sing this, and if they don't, then okay, something, and if they do, then so they had their own ways of judging musical Tanpura line ek wo kali ek bana चलेगा चले बिल्कुल ट्यून नहीं है हाँ थोड़ा सा So while he's doing this, I'll spend a couple of minutes just talking about how natural harmonics work. So if you have a fundamental frequency n, then the natural harmonics will be 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And so if you have 100 hertz as a fundamental frequency, then the harmonics will be 200, 300, 400, 500. You can now extrapolate it to an octave. So 100 is fundamental, 200 becomes the octave. Then you take 300 and then extrapolate it back between 100 and 200. Then you take 400 and so on and so forth. So when you do that, you basically the set of harmonics you get after the fundamental or the octave, the fifth, the fourth, and the third, which is basically the upper sa, pancham, madhyam, and gandhar. These are natural harmonics of any vibrating string that you will hear. What makes this complex, in addition to all of this, is this Jawari bit. And Dr. Vishwas ji wanted me to talk about this in specific, and why acoustic Tanpura is even today irreplaceable. It's absolutely irreplaceable by any electronic gadgets, because precisely of this reason. You can digitally simulate 100 hertz, you can digitally simulate 200 hertz, you can digitally simulate 300 hertz, you can do all of these things. What you cannot do is change the Jawari. What you cannot do is change the harmonical content of what comes out of it. You cannot change the what is it that I want to hear and not hear. These kinds of fine adjustments that happen on the instrument. Now, this definitely requires a very good Tanpura, and it definitely requires a very well-trained musician. And I'm going to take that as for granted, saying this is the basis over which we are talking. Given these two assumptions, Tanpura becomes an extremely important part, because it drives what we sing or play. And when we talk of consonance and dissonance, it basically means that what you're singing or playing should be in consonance with what your Tanpura is saying. For somebody who is listening on the other end, and if somebody understands how a Tanpura works and is able to hear it, they will feel the dissonance when your rag doesn't match with what the Tanpura is saying. And And the same goes when it's in perfect tune, and then you say, wow, this is cruel. And that's because it's in perfect consonance with the Tanpura that's behind you. What happens in electronic instruments is basically it gives you the fundamental and the octave and the fourth or the fifth, that's it. There are no complex harmonics coming on them. It will give you standard harmonics which come out of a simple vibrating string. So it's like a sonometer for those who know it. It's a simple vibrating string which will have its fundamental and some standard harmonics. That's what you will hear in an electronic Tanpura. The reason some of us are very particular about the Tanpura that we play with, or that we have a Tanpura for accompanying us and so on and so forth, is because of this sensitivity to this part of the music. And this is crucial to our music. And it's not about Drupad or Carnatic or Hindustani. It's across all our classical forms of music. Even in Carnatic music, they do have very fine shrutis and singing and so on and so forth. It's just a different style of singing. So whether it's Drupad or Khyal or any other form or Carnatic form of music, these fine notes are very important. So we don't have just 12 notes. We have a fundamental, we have an octave, we have everything in between. And how do we use what's everything in between is the artistic ability. And it needs to be, and so you have to understand yourself, your music, and that instrument that you're playing with. Okay, so people can see. Okay, I'll keep the mic down. Yeah. So this is Tumba made out of pumpkin. Oh, so this is Tumba made out of pumpkin. These are specially grown. The what I will tell you. These are specially grown for musical instruments. They are not for it. It has a hollow stem at the top. This is the sound bowl, and there are four strings. The two middle ones. Two are fundamental, and then this is the third, which is tuned to the lowest, and this is the fifth. This is the bridge, and after the session, maybe you can all come and have a look at the shape and the structure of the bridge. Now, take the mic. So I want to show you something interesting. इसके ऊपर रखते हैं ये हाँ इधर पास में रखिए ना. So I want you guys to hear very carefully. Don't bother about harmonics, don't bother about anything else. Look at this small little thing. This is without the thread. This is just a plain string. Now see what the thread does to it. This is what you get. This is what is called Javari. Now what does it mean is, What it means is, when you put the thread between the string and the bridge, you are causing this string to graze on the bridge. And that's grazing sound is what you hear. That's what is called Javari. Now, if you don't have this on a flat instrument, there are different ways of doing even the flat Javari. For example, Sitar or a Veena, we don't use a thread. So, but that Javari is a little different from a Tanpura Javari. In those instruments, you will not hear the grazing sound. It's usually only in the Tanpura, but there are certain types of instruments, and it's a personal preference, right? For example, Ravi Shankar Sitar has a buzzing sound. Now, that's open Javari, and Vilayat Khan or a Nikhil Banerjee Sitar is more closed. We call it a closed